Today we're looking at depression. It's a heavyweight subject, a serious subject, and one that can't be solved in a 60-minute episode. So we're not even attempting to do that today. However, I decided to tackle this beast of a topic as some of our students who attend the 7-day mastery program have been diagnosed with depression or have at some stage in their lives experienced depression. Joining me today is Minnie Lane. She has over a decade's worth experience in helping men to become more attractive by essentially embracing their true selves. Her coaching combines awareness of the mind, body, and human behaviour from in-depth training in communication, psychology, vipassana meditation, yoga, and sensory deprivation. She has spent most of her adult life working hard to understand the best methods to eliminate the root causes of mental and emotional blocks that prevent us from being our natural, confident, and attractive selves. Minnie has received incredible feedback from our 7-day mastery students, specifically the ones who struggle with crippling low confidence and traumatic emotional baggage. Minnie, welcome once again to A Piece of the Attraction podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You want to get something off your chest very quickly, yeah?
No, I was just going to say, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. This is a topic that is very close to my heart, from my own personal experiences. But, you know, we do need to mention straight off the bat that we're not medical professionals. This is not intended to be medical advice, just to clear that up.
No, of course. Right, let's get to it. Minnie, is it fair to say that we deal with problems quite differently, you and I?
Yes, I think that's beyond fair.
Okay, so you helped me, or kind enough to give me some of your time recently. I was going through a bit of a challenging time, some personal issues, or just one thing really. And this was a few months ago, and I wouldn't say it's depression. It wasn't depression, it was kind of like a sadness rather than depression. It was a sadness. And you gave me your advice and I understood it, I took it on board, and guess what I did? I ran away to Portugal. I said, I can't handle this. I don't want to feel sad. And I picked up my child and I was like, right, and I booked a last minute holiday to Portugal and we ran away there. Literally, I didn't want to talk to anyone for a week. So I was completely in my own thoughts and it made me feel awful. I was like, I've just got too much time to be sad and think about this one, thing that's happened, this one challenge. So as soon as I got back, I did everything that I think you say don't do, which is I got busy. I say yes to everything. I took on so much work. It's unbelievable. Even like my sister, she's like, are you sure you're not like, burning the candle at both ends? Yeah. And I was like, if I stop for a second, I'm going to get sad again, and I don't want to feel that. That's kind of like the anti-message. You're like, it's complete opposite to what you what you advise.
It is. I get it. I also totally get it. That is quite a normal way of dealing with, well, like you said, I mean, this wasn't really something you would count as depression, but a normal way of dealing with pain. Humans have developed many sort of normal ways to deal with pain in terms of avoiding it, or distracting yourself from it, basically, or suppressing it, with alcohol, throwing yourself into work to distract yourself from it, keeping really, really busy, whatever, basically anything.
It made me feel better.
It.
But it wasn't like, this is my philosophy, is that if you feel sadness too much, that can lead to depression. It can become like a sort of mental habit. You get stuck in this kind of just feeling sad. It's almost addictive, that sadness. It's like anxiety and worry can be addictive. This is what psychologists have told me, and I can kind of sometimes see a pattern. Sadness, you become this melancholy person, this permanently blue person, and that's when I think depression can come along. I think busy people, they can feel stressed, they can have off days, but generally they're kind of too busy. How can I put this? When you're busy, you're also in a more positive frame of mind. There's more opportunities come your way when you're busy and you've got that positive outlook, and that can stop something bad happening that could lead to even more depression. It's kind of like a positive feedback loop.
Yeah, so sadness can be a trigger for depression. It can turn into depression, and I think what you're talking about is the importance of not dwelling on something.
Too much.
Which I completely agree with, and I think it's important to notice that there's a difference between feeling sad and thinking about the sadness and creating a story around that, and separating out those two things is absolutely vital, because it's the feeling of the pain that's necessary, not the story that you're telling yourself around that. So if you're feeling sad and you turn that into an identity, and it becomes, I am a sad person, and look how bad my life is, and look at all these things that are happening, that's telling yourself a story around it and then identifying with it, and that's not a good idea. That's going to make it worse, not better, because then that's going to create more thoughts, which are then going to create more feeling, which are going to create more thoughts, and it becomes a spiral.
Yes.
And many people experience that sort of downward spiral, and throwing yourself into something else can break that cycle, which can be a very, very positive thing. However, that is dealing with the symptoms, not the actual deeper problem. And I think that's when there's a difference between talking about situational sadness and depression and that sort of more chronic major depressive periods that don't seem to have any identifiable cause. If you go through a bad breakup, your body will heal from that, and time is the greatest healer. That's true. That healing will go on in the background while you're doing other things, for sure. But if you're throwing yourself into something and sort of denying your feelings and repressing them, that is going to come back up another time. And
well, let's talk about suppression versus repression. So basically what I do is I suppress. Repress is something completely different. Repress is when you have, you're not aware that you're upset. You're kind of like just, you don't even acknowledge the fact that there's a problem.
Yeah,
that's dangerous. So deep
that it's not in your consciousness.
That's dangerous, and that's where I feel you are. You're very helpful with our students who are kind of like in a denial. I'm not in a denial. I'll say if I stop, I'll get sad. I'll start looking at this thing that happened to me recently that I went through, and it will eat me. It will eat me, and it will make me bitter. So I'm very aware that there's some issues in my life and I can't resolve them right now, so I'm going to distract myself and keep busy. That's suppressing. Then you've got repressing, which is the guy that's walking around and he thinks everything's fine, and then one day he wakes up and he's like, having a massive nervous breakdown. I think you're very good at helping the students that come to us.
Yeah, so it's like
they break down with you a lot, whereas people like me who are suppressing don't really break down. I've never broken down. Like, I've been sad and I've cried, but not really had this massive kind of like, I can't do it anymore, I need to just I just have a nervous breakdown. I've never experienced that, because I think I've always known it's there. It's the ones who are repressing it, suddenly they just have a meltdown on the bus or something. Something triggers it. So
sometimes people can have repressed, I think of it as like unprocessed trauma, essentially. And some of you can have like a backlog of unprocessed trauma in you that you have repressed so much that you're not conscious of it anymore, and then something can happen in your day-to-day life, like a bad breakup or losing your job or something, and that can make you sad or feel a bit depressed, and that can actually trigger those other similar feelings that you have repressed to come to the surface at the same time. And that's when everything gets massively blown out of proportion, because it's the old trauma coming up as well as the current trauma. So what you're talking about is like going through a trauma and then having to process that trauma. But it's for you, it's staying within that trauma. What you're going through is related to what's happened. It's not triggering up old repressed stuff that you haven't dealt with from your childhood or something like that, which is what happens to a lot of people. And that's when I've definitely been through periods like that. And there's only so much you can repress that. And I used to deal with stuff by keeping busy. I had a major trauma when I was 14.
But you are a busy bee. I mean, you're always off doing things. I can't say you're one of those slouchy people that just sit there with a glass of red wine watching Netflix in the daytime.
No, that's definitely not me.
So you are busy.
I'm busy, but I have a lot of space in my life as well. I will be very, very busy for a few weeks. I have a busy job, a busy schedule, busy social life, but then I will take the time to, you know, take a week or 10 days out and just sit and meditate for that whole time and create loads of space to bring stuff up.
Oh, you actually allow yourself to feel those suppressed feelings, I should say, or repressed feelings.
I have had to, you know, and different people have different traumas in their life. But, you know, I had a major trauma when I was 14 when my mum committed suicide, and I came home from school and found her, and that was obviously a horrendous thing to go through at that age, and I didn't have the tools to deal with that properly at that age, and dealt with that by, you know, going to the woods with my friends and drinking a bottle of vodka, and being so busy that I never had any spare time. You know, I'd go to school, I'd go straight from school to dancing, I'd be there till 10 p.m, I'd come back, I'd be talking with my sisters, then go to bed, wake up, go straight, you know, just no time. I'd often, and that went on.
And you had to look
after
your younger sister also, you had to kind of take care of her a bit.
Well, yeah, my sister's only 1.5 years younger than her, but I think I felt very maternal over her, certainly like during the trauma, because she was actually there when I found my mum, but she didn't see, and so I think in that moment I really repressed all of the trauma pretty much that I was going through, because my sister hadn't seen and I didn't want to scare her, so I didn't actually allow myself to express what I was going through, and so much of it got just hugely repressed, and I, to the point where I was fine, you know, on the outside fine. I think if you hadn't known what I'd been through, you would never ever in a million years have guessed. And that was all fine for a few years until I went to university, and then suddenly, seemingly from nowhere, I went through this, you know, wall of depression that lasted about 6 months altogether. You know, I actually left university because I felt I couldn't cope with it. And that's when I realised, you know, actually I'm not okay, and I'm going to need to deal with all this stuff. And so I feel like I've gone on a really long journey since then, but I felt I've actually had to go and create that space in my life to bring up my stuff, to process it. You know, it's unprocessed trauma, and there's only one way through that.
That is objectively a huge trauma that you went through. I mean, no one's going to say, oh, well, you know, things happen. Something like that is huge. There's a lot of people, though, they have like depression, and they've not been through something like that.
Well, it's hard to know what you've been through. I think, you know, people.
Okay, my mother. I shouldn't bring her up. Okay, well, I've said it now. My mother, she had depression, and honestly, if you look at her life, it was fine. It was fine. It was a good life. She had horses. It was not, you know, she had her ups and downs, but she didn't go through something as tragic as you went through. She has her health. She has healthy children. You know.
Yeah, sure. People... I mean, but the thing is, that we think about trauma as being, you know, we look at someone's life, and often people don't even remember the first few years of their life, and it's hard to even know what happened to people. And then, you know, we often think that your life starts when you're born. It actually really doesn't. You know, you can go through trauma in the womb. There's a really good book actually by, I think she's called Susan Gerhard, called Why Love Matters, and she talks a lot about everything that happens in the womb and how that can actually affect you and make you more prone to certain things. So, you know, even if something...
I agree with that from my own experience. If you're stressed out when you're pregnant, and I was very, very stressed out because I had to give up smoking, drinking, I gave up everything, and that's actually, I'm going to come to that later, but I was a stressed out pregnant woman. I was like, oh, the baby, I can't do this, can't do that, the baby. And he didn't, you know, he was a lovely baby, but he was a little bit edgy, I should say. You know, he wasn't that totally relaxed baby that sleeps all day and night. And yet all my friends who were like totally cool about the pregnancy, they had very calm children that slept all day and night. Maybe it's a coincidence, but I don't know.
It's hard to measure, isn't it?
But I do think there's some, based on my own experience and from what I've seen of my friends, I think there's some truth in that.
Yeah, and then, you know, on top of that, it's just having the tools to process your emotion. You know, it's any trauma can be processed, but if you haven't been shown how to do that, I think this is something that particularly applies to men, because typically men are not really shown how to deal with their emotions, or even that they're allowed emotions as much as women. That is a generalisation, of course, but a true one. And, you know, that's another reason why I think that the work that we do is so important, because there is actually a lot of evidence that being in a relationship can help a lot with with men who are depressed, because often through women they can be shown better ways of dealing with their emotions. I can't remember what we're talking about now.
I'm going to ask you a question anyway. So is depression so nuanced that sometimes people can just be misdiagnosed? Do you think there's basically a lot of people, being diagnosed with depression and it's just like, no, you're just sad. No, you've just been through a really traumatic experience. Or no, you're just a bit blue. Or no, it's because you gave up drinking alcohol, so it's made you feel depressed and it's not going to last for long. I mean...
Yes, in a nutshell, I think that there's misdiagnosis, not just in like the medical world, but also with each other. It's a very misunderstood subject, and also because the physical symptoms are quite similar to other things like being tired, being hungry sometimes, things that are a bit more normal, being sad, grieving, just being a bit lonely. It can be very hard to tell.
Is a way to diagnose depression is when you say, I've got a happy life, why do I feel so crap? Is that a good way? Because if you say like, oh, it's because you've been through a traumatic experience, you can say, oh, that is the smoking gun. But if you're somebody that's like, oh, I've just got this wonderful life and I'm just so depressed, I'm so unhappy, is that a clear indicator that, there's something definitely wrong here? Because there's no excuse.
I think that, there's lots of different types of depression to start with, that varies from just being depressed for no reason to situational depression. Then you've got
situational depression.
So that's when it's more related to something that's happened, like, so say you've lost a baby or something like
God
that,
forbid.
or
so those kind of things
where it's like,
that makes sense to me.
It can trigger put you into a depressive state, but there's kind of a reason for it. Then there are other types of depression where there's not a clear trigger for it, where it just seems to be, and it can be that can make it even worse sometimes to be able to observe your life and think I should be happy, and that feeling of I should be something actually contributes to make the depression worse, rather than sort of allowing and accepting it. And then you've got sort of medical conditions like bipolar, otherwise known as manic depression, and things like that, which are, so
are they the minority though?
Well, I think when we're talking about depression, we're more talking about the more, I guess like sort of major depression, where you go through a period of depression, seemingly for no reason or triggered by a reason, but goes on for a long time. But
I've
typically,
never had that.
No, that's very
no.
lucky.
I've never had that. But I'm not trying to say, oh, look at me, I've never had that. But it's because my method is to keep busy. I've been sad. I've gone through. I haven't gone through anything as traumatic as you, no. But I have gone through some things. When I do reveal some parts of my life, people are like, oh my God, you went through that, Kezia? But it wasn't as awful. I mean, God, it's not a competition here, gosh. But what I'm trying to say is that I felt sad. I've gone through challenges. I've gone through... The nearest thing I went through in terms of depression was when I was pregnant, because I had to give up smoking and drinking, and I felt very anxious because of the baby, and I was worried and stuff, and I was, getting a big belly, and, I really like to look very thin. So it was quite a few things. I couldn't even just say, I'll have a drink tonight and forget about it. There was nothing. Yeah. So that was like the closest thing I felt to a form of depression, but I knew it was coming to an end.
I knew,
I've got
depression.
8 more months, I've got 6 more months, counting down the days so I can have a glass of wine and get back into shape and get my life back, in order.
Which will have given you an element of control that I think is lacking in most in most people's depression, is that feeling of like, is this ever going to end?
My point is that all the other times just kept busy, and I think I know it's just such like people are like, that's such so old fashioned, it's such an outdated concept, Kezia, but I think it really helps.
There's a time and a place for it. I'm not going to say don't do that, if that works. I think for everything it's like finding what works for you.
But you do the opposite. You go to like these what were they called, the deprivation tank or something. I can't keep up with
I've done all sorts of things. In fact, the only thing I haven't done is take antidepressants, and I've been through some quite seriously dark phases. And I'm not saying there's not a time and a place for antidepressants as well. For me that would have been an absolute last resort that I really wanted to avoid at all costs. But my sister's an interesting one, because she's obviously been through pretty much the same trauma as me. Okay, she didn't have the trauma of finding my mum, but she lost her mum to suicide. She was only a couple of years older than me at the time. This is my older sister.
Sorry.
And she's one of these people that's just fine all the time. She's fine always, and she gets very upset when I have a period of depression, because she feels it's very unfair almost that she doesn't have to deal with that. I'm glad she doesn't have to deal with that personally, but personality, some people are just more prone to certain ways of dealing with things than others, and I think people are like plants, really. We all need different types of things, different conditions. She's a sort of more stable person. I'm a more of an up and down person than she is in general. Although I've become a lot more stable as I've got
She was older than you. I mean, that makes a big difference. How I would have experienced something internally at 14 is different to how I experienced something at 16, even 15, because plus on top of that, just different characters. Everyone thinks, oh, well, we're sisters or we're brothers, we should be exactly the same. It's completely untrue. How helpful are labels? You kind of answered this, but I think that once you've been told you've got depression, some people use that as a get out of jail free card. And I know that sounds harsh, and some people are going to be listening out there thinking that's really unhelpful. But I've seen it with my my students who have autism. Like, we have a mutual student here. I think you know who I'm talking about. And he was diagnosed. I was like, oh, please don't be diagnosed with it, please. And as soon as he was diagnosed, he's like, I don't have to do anything anymore. I just have to tell people I have autism. They understand. I'm going to start wearing these ear things, like the, what do you call them, the ear guards or something. And I was like, oh, for Christ's sake. And then when I think somebody close to me was diagnosed with depression, it was like, it didn't help them to be diagnosed. Like, well, that's it. Psychiatrist said I'm depressed, so everyone has to now, not listen to me go on, but they have to, don't give me advice kind of thing. Let me do what I have to do. I know best. I have depression. That's what the doctor said. He said this, she said that. And then as soon as you say, you know what, why don't you just get out of bed and get a fucking job or something like that, or just, go outside, have a walk, get yourself a dog. That's one of the best things I could tell someone with depression, is just get a dog. Forces you to go out, etc. Oh, what do you know? I have depression. Don't tell me what to do. I'm in my depressive state right now. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think labels can be helpful to a point, but it's important not to get stuck in them. And I see it as there's like a cycle to processing trauma, and that becomes very clear when you do a lot of meditation, because you can actually see that cycle going on. And the earliest stages of processing depression trauma are, well, first you need to recognize it and acknowledge it, and then it's about allowing and accepting it. And these are sort of the first stages. And so I think a label can be quite helpful for that, for making people feel, oh, that it's not that there's something wrong with me, or that other people are going through this too. I'm not alone. It can help guide people more quickly to ways of getting help, and they can Google it and see what other people have done and stuff like that.
So no, don't want to go to Google. They say don't go to Google about.
Maybe don't Google it. But there is.
If you're ill, they say stay away from. If you've got a symptom, any symptom, stay away from Google. First rule of advice.
But I think where
end up in the dark web or something, consulting tarot cards,
You do have to be careful.
Suddenly he's like, I'm reading runes. I don't know what's happened. I went on to find out what was wrong, why I had this rash, and now I'm reading runes. Private joke.
Now I've watched 500 YouTube videos. Oh well. I mean, there's a time and a place for all types of help, and there are points when you do need to kind of go, right, okay, I've got to do something about this and take action. There are points of the cycle where action is not helpful, and trying to force someone to take action is not helpful.
So pull your socks up is not good advice. Good old fashioned, pull your socks up. It can be. Get the dog, get your life sorted, get your shit together. That kind of. Get your act together. Get your bloody act together.
The thing that advice like that ignores is the how. it's only useful to tell someone to pull their socks up if they know how
they're
to pull
wearing
their socks up, right? if they don't know how to pull their socks up, telling them to help pull their socks up is.
But what if I said
helpful.
to someone, okay, I see this depressed person, they say, I'm depressed, okay, and I'm like, okay, let's look at your life right now. Okay, so first thing you need to do is get a job. Okay, you're sitting at home, I can't get a job, I'm depressed, and I get anxious, and there's all these other things that come with depression, anxiety. What's the other one when you're, the one when you're scared of going outside? Agoraphobia. They're all sort of connected. And I was watching a show the other day. Have you seen it? It's called The Doghouse, and it's about people who. It's a really good show. It's on, I think, ITV, and it's people who go to get a rescue dog. And they follow the family, and they get a rescue dog, and it's a really sweet show. And it was like, oh, the dogs are so cute. But they were saying. The people who work there said, we're getting so many calls now of people saying, I've got depression, I've got anxiety, I've got agoraphobia, I can't look after my dog anymore. And they said, we never used to have this.
Yeah,
they said
I really
we never
think...
used to have that. They always had people, saying, I can't cope with looking after a dog. But they said, now we're finding there's this excuse and there's more dogs being handed. And I thought, I'm noticing a pattern here. And I've noticed it even with my students going, well, I'm sorry, I've been diagnosed clinically depressed. And then as soon as I'm going back on myself here a little bit, I'm repeating myself. As soon as you say, pull your socks up, do this, get a dog, get a job, it's kind of like, oh, I have agoraphobia with it, and I have this phobia and that phobia. I've noticed that it's all kind of like...
Well, that's the thing with depression, where this sort of hopelessness, along with it comes helplessness.
It collects other mental illnesses. It collects... Being depressed, if you're staying at home and you're watching Netflix all day and you're drinking and you're smoking weed especially, I'm not going to get into that, all this kind of stuff, I find that, and then when you go out and have to socialise, you do feel a bit kind of like paranoid. And then you go, oh, I've got paranoia. Oh, I don't like going on the bus with too many people. I have agoraphobia. And then, maybe I have I'm on the spectrum even. Honestly, I think it's a vicious circle.
I absolutely agree, and my advice is
Thank you.
First of all, you've got it's a sort of two-part thing. You've got to know that it's not your fault that you feel the way that you do, but then with that, it is your responsibility to do something about it. And I think that part can get missed with the label. It can, the label is helpful for you to understand. Okay, it's not your fault, and it's acceptable that you feel like this. But then the other part of that is you've got to take action and do something about it. And when that gets missed, people can then get stuck in these labels, and that's not helpful. And that's when the label can actually have a negative effect, rather than helping you to get out of it. I do think healing should be the aim. I have found it. I've never actually been diagnosed with anything. I've never been to the doctors about it. A therapist once suggested to me, she thought I probably had post-traumatic stress disorder from abandonment, which when I read about it, it seemed to fit very well, but I always saw it as, okay, that's helpful to understand why I might be feeling like this, but I always believe I can do something about this, and I can change, and I can heal from this, and I can grow. We too often in life we use labels and things to identify us, and we forget that we're fluid things, human. It's not that you are this thing or you are that thing. It's that you are that thing at the moment. And if you don't want to be that thing, you can grow and change into anything else. But you've got to do the work. Like, no one else can do that for you. A label can be a helpful pointer for you to start to help yourself, or get the support that you need, or help you to start processing it, acknowledging it, accepting it, understanding it. And that can be very helpful. But you've got to carry on with the work. You can't just get stuck and go, oh, okay, well, that's me then. And I think...
just see that a lot, though. I agree with you 100%. I think human beings are amazing, and if they just put a bit of effort into fixing themselves, just that little few steps, magic can happen.
Yeah, you can heal anything. And
you think depression can be cured? You don't think it's a condition?
I don't actually, and I don't say that lightly. I lost my mum to suicide because she was depressed, and that began with postnatal depression. When my little sister was born, that then
she had postnatal depression.
She did, yeah. She actually attempted suicide a couple of times then, but thankfully for me was unsuccessful. And then it came back, and she didn't know what to do with it.
Did she go to anyone? Sorry, I know. By the way, if you want to not talk about this at some point,
I'm actually fine talking about it, okay. and actually that is testament, I think, to show how much you can deal with your own stuff.
So you couldn't talk about this before? maybe
I didn't talk about it for years. So
if someone had brought up something about, like, what your parents doing, would you just change the subject completely?
I would have mentioned it, but I didn't sort of actively talk about it.
Too painful.
I think it was. I think I would sort of talk about it a bit, but it was because I was sort of denying it in myself, and I understand why, because actually when it came up, it was actually quite overwhelming, and you can't just suddenly break down like that in, if somebody asks you a question. I couldn't allow myself to open it up a bit, because if I opened it up a bit, the whole lot was going to come up.
Yes.
And yes. I needed a week off work on my own to deal with what came up, but I have done that now and got through it, and thankfully by that time I'd done enough meditation and stuff that I really understood pain and the cycle of pain and my emotions and how to process them. My sister was extremely supportive. I really was lucky to have her. She was an absolute, to some degrees, I think I probably might even owe my sister my life.
Really?
I don't think that's much of an exaggeration to say that she was really there when I was going through a very difficult time. Were you
suicidal at some point? Or is that too personal?
I think, no, that's not too personal at all. I think, we're talking about, can things get misdiagnosed, and, again, even not even talk about depression, talking about, are you suicidal? Again, it's a difficult thing to say, because it's like thinking of a colour blue, and I think of a colour blue, and we go, well, is it the same colour blue? It's very hard for us to understand if we're talking about the same shade of blue without something physical to be able to compare it. We can sort of go, oh, I don't know, is it dark, is it light? But we can't really know if we're talking about the same thing. And, I've had a few periods of depression, none as bad as when I was 18. That was the longest one. Since then, I think that lasted such a long time because I didn't know if I was ever going to come out of it. Because when it happens for the first time, you just think, is this what my life is like now? Am I just going to be like this for the rest of my life? God. Once you've come out of it, you then have that knowledge. Well, I have come out of it before, so I can come out of it again.
Right. Okay.
Since then, I've had more like short periods of like a couple of weeks. But I did have one very, very bad patch, and that only lasted a couple of weeks, but it was bad. And in that time, usually my sister would say, well, I'm worried about you. And I'd be like, don't worry about me. I'm really depressed right now, but it's fine. Don't worry. I'm just going to get on with my life.
You're going to pull your socks up.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Good. Yeah, I did carry on with life.
Old-fashioned advice does ring true.
Yeah, you have to. I had to carry on with my life. Yeah. And, this one time she was like, I'm worried about you. And I was like, yeah, I'm worried about myself, actually. And that was a hard thing to say to her, I don't want to make my sister worry, and a part of me wanted to hide that from her. But I did find myself at one point Googling, am I suicidal? Because it had gone to a point where I was in a very bad place, and then I went through a period where I just felt indifferent. I wouldn't even say I felt depressed anymore. I felt indifferent to absolutely everything, and that worried me more than anything.
It numbs you. That's what I've heard. My mum mentioned that, about this numbing feeling, and she just used to zone out.
Yeah.
Completely zoned out. I was walking with her once, and I lost my dog in the park. I lost him. I was like, where's my dog? Where's Rocky? That's his name. And she went, what? I was like, where's my dog? You're meant to be looking after him. She went, I don't know. And she looked through me. I was like, oh my God. I said, really? You need to get help. She looked through me like a zombie.
Yeah.
I was like, I was really scared. And that's when she was just the next day, she was kind of in denial. She was like, that never happened. I said, you were looking through me going, I don't know where your dog is. It's my dog.
Yeah.
And she must have numbed out or something.
Yeah,
she's okay now. Guess why? Because she's busy. No, I'm not joking. Because she's really, really busy.
Look, time heals things. Like if you do nothing about it, you'll be up and down.
You went through something awful, and I think anyone that's gone through something like what you've been through is kind of like, and people are going to get angry with me. They've got a right to feel fucking shit for as long as they need until they get over it. And then there's people who are just like, I don't know, they say I'm depressed, and you just look and think, what's so depressing? What's happened? But I might be a little bit unsympathetic. I should be more sympathetic, but I have found that a lot of my students have come to me and said, Kezia, thank you so much. That was the best advice I've had. Just, pull your socks up advice. Now, that's what I want to come to, is that a lot of our students, And I always put my 7-day mastery students, I get you to work with specific ones who have mentioned that they've had these kind of awful traumas and carrying some emotional baggage. And they specifically, ask for you also, many of them. But some of these people, they've been to so many life coaches and stuff before that, even psychologists, and they haven't helped them. So what are you doing to help them? What do you do in that 6 hours, or maybe you have a double session with them sometimes, 12 hours? What do you do that, that life coach didn't do?
It depends what kind of help they need, actually, because there is a time and a place to say to someone, you need to pull your socks up and get on with it.
We should call this episode "Pull Your Socks Up" versus was it deprivation? What's it called?
Sensory deprivation.
Sensory deprivation. Your choice. They're the ones I deal with, but the ones who have got something which is really, because I did it once where I had a student, he wasn't a 7-day mastery student, but he had some repressed shit going on.
Yeah.
And I I'm very good at this. I can get information out of people very, very quickly. And I said, this is what I think has happened to you. And then it all started coming up. He goes, oh, I feel like a big weight has been lifted. And then he went into this dark depression. He was like, that shouldn't have happened. I wish I hadn't have brought this all up. Anyway, we fixed it. We helped him. He's fine now. But that's when I was like, okay, I think these ones are better to be with you.
Yeah, you do have to be careful what you're bringing up, and often going to see a psychotherapist is the correct course of action, or getting medical intervention if things are really serious. So it's you do have to make a bit of a call on what's the right amount to I think digging isn't usually the right answer. Creating. So
what do? You don't
mostly
dig.
Creating a space and allowing them. People will show you what if you've got to learn to listen. And generally, I'll just create a space and then I'll allow them to put stuff into that. I would create a space of trust. And as they start to put stuff into that space of trust, it becomes clear to me what needs working on. And sometimes somebody really just needs to be listened to for a while. Or sometimes they need acknowledgement and recognition of what they're going through. If it's at the very early stage of that cycle, that can be the necessary tactic. Other times it's like they need to stop dwelling because they're telling themselves a story that they're getting stuck in, and they're using language that's very unhelpful,
such as
I always this, I never that. You have to pick them up on that and say, is that true? Is it always, or is it regularly? Because there's a difference between those words. Is it I always feel like this, or is it I regularly feel like this, or is it I have a tendency to feel like this? And if you don't catch the way that your brain is talking, that
anchors
is
emotion. Certain words, if you just replace certain words, it can make a huge difference.
Yeah, and
regularly
sometimes they will literally just
always.
show me. They'll show me where their emotional block is with their language, and then I'm like, okay, well, that's what we need to work on. We need to look at this bit, or we need to look at that bit. When I went through that very difficult patch, I was lucky because I had my sister there, and she's very emotionally mature, and we both sort of worked through it together, and to the point where at one point I actually gave her a script of what I sort of worked out when I was feeling better, what would have helped me when I was feeling really low. Because when you're in that state, you're helpless and hopeless, so you don't even want to be helped a lot of the time. You don't want answers, and so when I was feeling better, I thought, okay, well, what would I have needed then? Wrote a script, said, right, next time that happens, I think try this, try that, and we sort of worked through it together, and essentially kind of came up with a method of helping and healing this process and sort of speeding it along. As I said before,
you sort of created your own method then, would you say?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Off the back of lots of study of other people's methods, and
you've got mystery method, then you've got mini method. But yours is going to be slightly more deeper.
But no, well, it was interesting actually, because I met a girl on an ayahuasca ceremony actually, and she was in a really, really bad way. And
what ceremony?
An ayahuasca ceremony.
You're getting my sister involved in this, aren't you? I've heard.
I wouldn't say I got her involved.
Minnie's getting my sister involved
in
in so much woo-woo stuff. It's unbelievable. Past lives. She's told me about this past lives experiment.
That was her.
Oh, blame her. Yes, blame her. And now you're going to get my sister to try this stuff.
Hey, look, she asked,
dear.
but yes.
You were like, yeah, I'll take you there. Okay, sorry, I interrupted your flow.
No, I met this girl. She was in a very bad way. I sat with her for a little bit. I didn't know her. And, you know, a little while later, she put something on Facebook just sort of quite earnestly asking for help because she was in a really, really bad patch. And I felt called to sort of do something about it. So I asked her for her email address, and I sent her a long email with some sort of supportive stuff, and then at the end I was like, when you're ready, here's some action that you may find helpful. And like 2 years later, I got a message from her saying, "Thank you so much. I will never forget the help that you gave me when I was at my lowest point," and said that it had really helped her. And interestingly, I was actually having a bit of a hard time at that moment. She sent me that. It made me feel amazing that I'd helped her. And then I actually went back and looked up the email that I'd sent her, and I read it, and I was like, oh, this is actually really helpful. So I helped myself with my own advice that I wasn't able to access at the time. And then sort of referred back to that at other times and sort of tweaked it here and there until...
So it's a kind of system, a template.
Well, I think that the most helpful thing is to start recognising what you're going through. You know, until you recognise what's happening, you can't really help. And that's why it can be very frustrating for people who are with somebody who's depressed, because you're looking at the external situation and thinking, I think what needs to happen here is they need to be told to pull their socks up. And that might be true. You know, there have been times with my sister when she's said, right, I think you need to just get up and get out of the house. And there's been times when that's not been helpful.
Get out the house line. I like that one. Just get out.
Well, it is a very good thing to do. It's very, very good advice. There have been other times when that has been the right thing, and she's sort of dragged me up and got out of the house, and it's made me feel a lot better. But I think, you know, crucially, the first time she went with me, and if there's one piece of advice I could give to somebody helping someone through depression, it's, you know, try and stay with them for a little bit. Try and get with them. Try and get them to tell you what it's like. Try not to intervene too much, actually. More get them to explore the feeling. Try and get them out of the story and into talking about feeling what they're feeling. So not into what's happened and why are you feeling like this, but more into what does it feel like, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is it? Where is it in the body? If it had a colour, what colour would it be? If it had a texture, what texture would it be? You know, these kind of questions that make people stay with the feeling and processing the feeling rather than buying into the story and reinforcing the story. If someone's getting stuck in story and they're dwelling on this happened, you know, I always do this, everything's never going to be good, blah, blah. That's when you need to sort of snap them out of it.
Yeah, I agree. Of course.
And call them up. That's
it's
when
unhelpful.
You can do some
My
fixing.
life's so crap. Everything's, you know, everyone's against me. Of course, that's unhelpful.
So that the more pull your socks up advice can be very helpful if somebody's in that stage where they're sort of believing and reinforcing their own story. You know, to say to them, well, is that true that I've been unhappy all week? And it's like, is that true? Or on Tuesday night when we were with our friends, were you laughing? Because if that's true, you can't say always. You can say, this week I have frequently felt very down. That's very different from I'm always down. And it just allows that little bit of space that can just help start the processing.
That's good that you do it, because I thought at some point when you were explaining this to me, I thought, oh God, she's overindulging people with depression. But actually, you then, you know, correct them.
Yeah, it's not about indulging it at all. It's really not about indulging
that's what I thought. I'm telling you, that's what I thought when you were explaining it. But...
Yeah, good that you brought that up, actually, because there is a massive difference. You know, I believe in sitting with it and processing it. I don't believe in making it worse by telling yourself a story about it and indulging in it and letting it become, oh, poor me. You know, the moment you start becoming a victim of depression, you're not doing yourself any favours and you're making it worse. You're not a victim. This just came to my head. Do people with depression blame themselves for things a lot? Do they say, I feel depressed? It's like it's an internal thing, or is it external? Because when I feel sad,
I'm a very external person. I blame everything else but me, you know, almost. Like I'll say, oh, it's because that person didn't like me. It was because that person, or because I wasn't on that algorithm. And it's kind of like I point, I know when I've done something wrong, I'm like, you know, okay, next time I'll do better. I can see I failed here. I need to do better. This is something I have control over. But usually I'm a little bit like, oh no, it was this person's fault. It was because that was an unlucky time, or Mercury was in retrograde, or something like that. Yeah. Do you think that's like the crucial difference between that is it?
Absolutely. There's
external people that blame external things.
This is actually, there's a lot of documentation.
You make everyone else feel depressed.
No, but it's true. We all have different ways of seeing the world, and you know, this has been studied. And people who internalize things, I think it's like if you think it's internal, so it's your fault, that it's stable, as in it's not temporary. It's not going to change. I'm not
good enough. I'm not this. Whereas I say,
there's one other factor I can't.
That's true. I'm not good enough. I hear that a lot. I'm not good enough. This is what I hear my people around me, and there's about 3 people I'm close to that have had depression. They keep saying I'm useless. I'm a hindrance. They keep saying I'm a hindrance onto other people. I have no control. Not control. It's a hindrance, and I'm useless, and I'm obsolete. Yeah. I hear these kind of things, whereas I'm like, no, everyone around me is obsolete. Everyone around me is not helping me enough.
Right. So these are both stories.
Yeah. They're both unhelpful.
And so if you're telling yourself a story and believing a story, oh, I'm useless, I'm worth it, I'm worth this, stuff like that.
That's what I hear
then
you're
internalizing it. And then if you're buying into that story, you know, you've got to understand the cognitive, behavioural connection. And if you're, you know, your thoughts create your feelings, and then your feelings influence your thoughts as well, and your actions. You know, they all sort of link together. So if you've got a thought, oh, I'm worthless, that's going to influence a feeling of feeling really shit. If you believe that thought, that's going to, and then you say it to people, and then they buy into it too. You're actually strengthening that thought, which is going to strengthen the feeling. Yes. So
that's with a lot of our students. That's what I feel.
So you've got to go the other. You've got to send it in the other direction. So you've got to sit with the feeling and allow the feeling, and not buy into the thought. You know, we should only keep thoughts in our mind that are true. And so if somebody's saying I am worthless, you know, they've got to show you the evidence of that if they want to keep that in their view of life. And you've also got to think, is this thought actually serving me? Is it helping me to have a view of life that includes the belief I am worthless? Because the world is as you see it. You know, everything that we take in, all the input, the sensory input that we take in, is filtered through our schema, our thoughts and beliefs about the world. You know, there is nothing actually has any inherent meaning. It's only what we perceive by filtering it through our schema of how the world works. Yes. and what things mean. Nothing actually has meaning. So if you want to change your experience, you need to find the negative thoughts and change them. So if you've got a thought, I am worth this, you've got a choice. You can believe that, you can tell other people, you can try and get them to believe it. And that's what depression, you know, this negative self-talk, it's like, you've got to think of pain as being like Eckhart Tolle talks about the pain body, and I think that's a very helpful way of looking at it. It's like a living thing that wants to feed, and it wants to get bigger and stronger. So if you've got this thought, I am worthless, it's going to try and get you to buy into it and feed it with your attention, and then it's going to try and get other people's attention to feed off that too, and that's just going to make it grow and grow and grow and grow. So you've got to think, do I want this thought to grow? If you don't want that thought to grow, stop giving it your attention. Bring it to the feeling and start processing the feeling instead.
Right.
Because those two things are separate. So if you've got a friend who's saying, oh, my life's worthless, I'm shit.
No, they don't say my life. This is what I'm trying to say. This is really important here. I'm the sort of person that says, oh, you know, like I said, I'm external. I won't say my life is shit, but I'll say like, oh, that didn't go my way because, you know, it's his fault. That person over there, I did everything correctly. I'm great. I don't make mistakes. It was this person, it was that person. The people that have depression say, they don't ever say my life is shit. They say, I am shit. That's the difference. I am shit. I am worthless. Whereas I say the opposite. That's maybe why I don't have depression.
Yeah, well, I say
I've got like outrage and stress, just as bad.
Sorry if this comes across as a bit offensive, but like I think there's two immature ways of dealing with things. There's one to blame everything else.
I know, no. I admit I shouldn't. I
Yeah.
do blame myself sometimes, but I do, like, my sister always says, you got too much entitlement, too much self-entitlement, Kezia, that's your problem. Whereas I think that's the opposite. People with depression have no self-entitlement.
Yeah, and that's like
they don't think they're entitled to anything. Whereas I'm like, no, I believe that the world, owes me whatever. I'm kind of like that. Like, why didn't I get that seat on the bus? Really, I'm like that. Like, why didn't I get the seat? And my sister's like, because you're nothing. You're nobody. Who cares about you? And I'm like, why isn't there a red carpet out? And I'm joking. Whereas a depressed person will be like, I don't deserve the red carpet. I don't deserve that seat. It's a completely different way of looking at things. I think I've just worked out why I don't have depression. Just become really self-entitled people and just expect the best.
But this is actually well documented. That there's a way of processing the world that means you're a lot more prone to depression. But again, you can change that. You can change anything about the way that your brain is processing things. But you've just got to, first of all, you've got to become aware of what your thoughts are, and then you can change them into whatever you want. But yeah, the ideal place to get to would be to blame nobody.
No,
not
absolutely.
blaming other
you don't want
people,
to be
not
my
blaming
extreme
yourself.
Because you'll just never get that seat on the bus and you'll think it's a massive conspiracy against you. I do. I get into my...
I kind of want to get a bus with you now.
That person hates me. That person just deliberately sat there. That person didn't say hello to me today. How dare they? They know who I am.
But that's helped you be very successful as well.
But it stresses you out and it does make you a lot of enemies because everyone just goes, what a bitch. Do you think depression is growing because of the pressure of social media, or do you think it's other factors, not social media?
So the social media thing...
Let's just wrap this up and blame everything on social media like everyone else does.
There is kind of like mixed...
Social media and Brexit. Everyone just blames on those two things, social media and Brexit.
We could just blame it all on Brexit, actually, couldn't we? That's what everyone else is doing.
Okay, we're not going to get into that. It's obviously 2 Remainers versus 1 Brexiteer here, so swiftly on to blaming on social media. No, seriously, what do you think? Because this is what everyone says. It's like social media is like just eating away at people's confidence.
The evidence is mixed, actually. There are some studies that show it can cause depression. There are other studies that show it can actually help ease feelings of depression and loneliness. And there are other studies that show things like you're more likely to use social media if you are depressed and things like that. So it's difficult to say what's cause and effect. And I think the problem with thinking about does social media cause this or what are the effects of social media is that it's not really acknowledging that there's so many different ways that you can use social media, and how you use it is going to determine the effect.
But Minnie, it must depress people when they see these fake lives.
Yes,
these fake lives look really real. That's the thing.
Well, that's the thing.
You know those
mentality,
people on social media that you say, "Oh, that's a fake life. That's a weird fake life." And then you've got people who do it very well. That fake life. They're just about affording those holidays. They're just about they go to that holiday.
Humble brag, you mean?
Not even a humble brag, but it's like I know people who check out the hashtags to find out what's trending on Instagram for locations.
Oh my god, I'm so glad that's not me. How tiring.
I know this. Dre, this is a real thing, by the way. Dre, have you experienced this? Have you seen this on social media where people were just like looking for hashtag what's trending and then going to that place so that they can hashtag it on Instagram?
Oh, I've done it to try and ride that wave for algorithm reasons.
Oh, he admits it. He's coming clear.
Yeah, well, if I want a post to go up high, I'll see if there's a hashtag that fits it.
Do you know you're causing millions of people to be depressed out there?
I don't think so. I think it's...
Mental health is essentially your fault.
Yeah, probably. But I feel like all these modern methods are just a way to express certain things that didn't exist before, which means a lot of things are more public. Mm-hmm. That's all. All these types of feelings existed before, it's just that we kept them to ourselves.
Yeah, but it can
now
fuel
we can compare
things.
them.
No.
It can
heighten things. Okay, there's always been jealousy, there's always been bragging, we know that. But if you think about what access you had to somebody with that lifestyle, if you were like living in some town where no one had jack shit, you would not see that wealth. You'd see maybe one wealthy person pass through your town in a nice car, and that would be your dose of envy. That would be your dose. Like, look at that wanker in his car, and it make your blood boil, and then you kind of like forget about it. But if you have access to people bragging, people your next door neighbor bragging, and you're thinking, look at this person's lifestyle. Where have I gone wrong? What am I doing? Whereas that guy that drove through your town that one time, you've kind of forgotten about him already. But having that constant stream of bragging from people that you even secretly think are less successful than you, less beautiful than you, because you kind of like know them in real life, or, you know, just less attractive. You think, how the fuck are they doing all that? I think that's very dangerous. So back to this person I'm talking about in particular. They went on this holiday, but they went for like a day. They got as many pictures in as humanly possible. They changed their shirt, you know, like 4 times to make it look like it was a different day. And they slowly uploaded those pictures over the course of a week. Hashtag, I don't remember where it was. It was an island. I can't remember which one. And then I was just thinking, my God, you know, this is to induce envy. This is all it is. So it must make people depressed. I mean, I knew, I can see right through all this because I know these charlatans. And they're charlatans, but they're kind of like nice charlatans. They're not really, you know, they're not dangerous people. They're just, you know, they just want to induce envy because it makes them feel better. And I'm thinking there's people out there who are looking at it going, oh my God, I can't go to Sardinia for a week. He's not there for a week. He's only there for a day, but smoke and mirrors, you can't tell anymore. So it makes people depressed. So I think social media has a direct effect.
But also, you know, you say it makes them feel better, but actually, again, it comes down to understanding the cognitive behavioural
No, they're all
relationship.
depressed. No. The people who are inducing envy on purpose are equally as depressed because they are envious of someone who, like, you cannot be. Some I don't know, some hip hop star or some model or something that you cannot top because they really do have that lifestyle. They really do. And you're trying to like compete with the next person, you know, the person above you. They're trying to compete with the person above them. So it's like a chain. And so that everyone is feeling shit on social media, I think, apart from the top people.
Yeah, I think there's a lot.
Even then, they're probably feeling shit at some point also because they're even using like these face apps and stuff, and they must be looking in the mirror going, I don't look like that cartoon dog or whatever it is, those filters that I've got
do
on.
Look like a cartoon dog, but that's something different.
In a very pretty way, I have to say, because everyone's thinking of like droopy or goofy or something. No, the very, very pretty one. My sister does the same thing, by the way.
Does she?
She thinks she looks like a cartoon dog.
Everyone tells me I look like that dog from Lady and the Tramp, and I'm like, I
yes!
watched Lady and the Tramp, and I was like,
yes!
Oh yeah, it is a bit like
Lady.
looking in the mirror.
I was thinking, this is not the other one. What's
That's
the name?
true.
Tramp.
You know, you got to count your chickens.
So do you agree with me? Have I convinced you yet that social media is, on the whole, crap for people's self-esteem, and that can lead to a form of depression?
Yeah, I think because of the way that people are using it, and it's it's that should mentality. I should be something other than what I am, like comparing yourself to other people. You know, that can be done outside social media too, but I do think social media provides like such an easy way to make yourself feel shit about yourself. And then the other side of that is, you know, if you've got feelings of not being good enough, and then you use social media to kind of combat that by posting a picture of your fake life, and then
your fake face.
You get lots of likes for it because everyone
your
thinks
fake
that,
body, your fake face.
If you create some sort of falsehood and then post it on social media, that's stemming from a place of you not thinking that the real you is good enough. Yeah. That then gets rewarded. What you've accidentally done there is rewarded and reinforced the belief that you're not good enough. So you're actually making yourself unhappy, even though in the short time you're also going to get that spike of feeling really good. Long term, you're doing yourself a lot of damage, and people don't understand that. That is just hugely misunderstood, and people need to start understanding that and treating social media differently.
I've got on my social media, I'm not heavy into it, I use it for work mainly, but I do have a private Facebook account. And I'm doing a cull as we speak, getting rid of nearly everyone on there that I don't know, really. I don't know what they're doing there. I don't mean like people from like I met from my childhood. I'm talking about people that I actually don't know. Because that used to be my fan page, but my fan page, I've moved it years ago. So I'm like, why do I have these people still? Why am I looking at their stuff? And there's a lot of people on here that don't post. They're just kind of like sharing goofy pictures, and they're like maybe talking about politics or something like that. That's fine. But I'm talking about those people who, you know, they're using it as a platform to say, look how sparkly my life is. That's what I think is very dangerous. I think do you advise your students to get off social media? If they've got that, I mean, if they've got that kind of a news a feed. So, like I said, you've got the friends who are just like, oh, look, me walking the dog today. Okay, right, that's not really going to induce envy, is it? I'm talking about the ones that, was it just my industry where it's so full of these?
I would make them look at that. I mean, I don't often get to that stage with people where I would even know what their social media presence is like. But yeah, if somebody was turning to social media to feel good about themselves, I would definitely be highlighting that that's not really going to help them in the long run, and try and encourage them to think of different ways of using that. I mean, actually, you're probably quite a good example of somebody who has had at least a lot of positive praise and stuff from social media.
Most of it is positive.
And it'd be very easy to get a huge ego from that and think, oh, that would make you feel really good about yourself. But actually, long term, do you think that has a positive effect on your self-esteem to get lots of...
That's a really good question. I've had my fair share of hate. You know, I had a video put up recently by the Red Pill movement who just hate women. And I was saying, oh, she looks like a cum bucket. Literally, it said cum bucket.
They probably meant in a nice way.
No, they were saying stuff like fake lips, silicone inflated bitch, and really awful thing. I hope you get AIDS and die. Water off a duck's back. I didn't give a flying crap. Once you've been on the LSS forum and had, remember that thing, PUA hate? Do you remember PUA hate? It was a forum.
I know
my God, they gave everyone a tough time. Like they used to put your head, they used to superimpose your head on, like they'd have pictures of me like giving blowjobs and like fake pictures.
I've never seen it.
When you kind of go through that, you do become hardened to it. You really just don't care anymore. You think, oh, is that the worst that they can do? I don't really use my personal one that much, so I can't say that. I mean, my work one is my work one, so I'm kind of a little bit emotionally detached from that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I look. Have you seen this girl? She did a BBC documentary recently. She's from Little Minx or Little Mix or Little Minx. Is that right? Little Mix. An X Factor sensation, and she her name is I think Jessie Nelson. That's it. I've got it. I've got the name. Jessie Nelson, and she was on there. With so much done to her face. She's like 28. So much done to her face. She looks like, like all these girls starting to look like David Guest a bit.
Oh, bless
yeah. But like, so much stuff. It's not even like subtle. And she's like, oh, I just like the amount of trolls she got, people saying you're hideous, you should die, you're the fat one, things like that. And she said, after, this by her own admission, she said, after X Factor she won, they had like a big party afterwards, and she said, I was just looking through social media, all this hate, and I'm like, why didn't you just not look at it? Because then there was this other woman who said that she's not on social media at all. She's a famous woman, she's got no social media at all, and she goes, apparently she had all these trolls saying stuff about her because she did an interview with some magazine about something. It was a bit controversial. She's like, I didn't know about it because I'm not on social media, so it didn't hurt me. So I think, of course, no one deserves it.
But we've all been trolled on social media.
Have you?
No, I
you look like that dog from Lady in the Tramp. Oh, boo-hoo. I got called a cum bucket. Beat that one.
Oh, I don't really care what people say about me on social
What do they
media.
say? Come on, what's the worst thing
I don't have that much stuff on there.
I bet you didn't have like someone wanting HIV on you. That's what I get. I hope she gets raped by someone with AIDS.
I mean, it's really sad that people feel the need to write stuff like that.
Come on, what's the worst one you've had? You've got to spill the beans now.
I actually can't think, but...
Have you been accused of being pumped up with silicone?
No, I think it's probably quite obvious that I'm not.
No, I've had silicone in my face. They think I've pumped my face with silicone.
It's not true, guys. She's
I take it as a
beautiful.
compliment.
I know her in person.
Okay, my last question is, what are some of the more extreme treatments out there that you actually agree with to help combat depression? extreme. We don't want to pull your socks up. Which things? Because I know you sort of experiment all this kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, as I said, I've tried pretty much everything except antidepressants, actually. So I've been through psychotherapy and stuff like that, vipassana meditation I mentioned. I'd say, I guess, ayahuasca and magic mushrooms, psilocybin.
They actually help depression.
There is a lot of evidence that they do, yeah.
What about acid, LSD?
I'm not sure. I believe it probably does, actually, but I'm not sure
I've taken it. I've taken LSD, and I just had some mad trip where I saw Julia Roberts and stuff walking in, and I was just thinking, just reflecting, like, how does that help depression, having that weird experience, you know? I saw all sorts of weird stuff. It just was like, then it went in my head, and after 8 hours went out my head. How does that help depression? Now I'm asking both of you because
I don't know. You should have asked Julia Roberts.
I was my cousin. I was like, I couldn't talk to her. I was like, she goes, "What's wrong with you?" We were both tripping out of our head, and she said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "You're Julia Roberts. I can't look at you." And she's like, "I am Julia Roberts, aren't I?" It's like 2 hours.
Which is confusing.
I don't even look like her.
In that state.
Okay, so everyone says this is a long conversation, so we won't go there. But you were saying, okay, you.
No, I think it's important. You know that evidence is quite new. You know, until recently it hadn't really been studied, which is such a shame.
But I just don't see how having a trip helps depression. That's what I mean.
There's both physiological changes, but also the experience allows you to get in touch with the repressed feelings and experience them almost as dreams or reality.
But I didn't have that when I took it. I had Julia Roberts.
That's why it's important.
Setting is important. Yeah. Setting is absolutely. Okay. I'm not talking about taking a load of magic mushrooms and going clubbing or something like that. You know, setting is vitally important. You know, it's
and intention.
And intention, yeah, and then you can bring up traumas, or they bring themselves up, and you process it. I did actually relive the worst day of my life on ayahuasca, but it was great. It was great because I understood. Okay, this is good. This is a positive thing, and I felt quite detached from it in a way. Like I was observing it rather than I actually felt fine. If you'd looked at me, you wouldn't have thought I felt fine at all. But I was all right. It was just like I just knew that I had to let my body go through the physical trauma, expression of the trauma that I hadn't been able to do at the time, you know, because I was with my sister and stuff. And, you know, I feel like, I mean, I never know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'll ever be depressed again, but I'm definitely in the best place I've ever been in my life. And you've seen how easily I can talk about stuff. It doesn't even. If I think about my mum, I just feel grateful that I had her for the time that I did have her. You know, and that is genuinely all I really feel about it now. I don't mind that I went through that trauma and other traumas that I've been through. I don't feel that I take baggage into new relationships or anything like that, other than like minor things. And I do feel I've done a lot of healing, and for me it's been a combination of things. You know, as I said, I've had psychotherapy, the meditation really helps. I believe ayahuasca and magic mushrooms really help. I went and sat in pitch black darkness for a week, as you know.
Putting your socks up helps.
Well, to me, that is a form of pulling my socks up. You know, it's like,
I know.
Go and deal with this.
Go
and create some space and actually face this thing.
Go out. Create more opportunities, blame everyone else, don't blame yourself. It's a conspiracy. No, do a nice combination. Some of it is other people's shit and the universe just being bloody unhelpful, and some of it is your shit and because you just didn't do a good enough job and you didn't try hard enough. I'm not a very basic bitch when it comes to this kind of stuff.
I think learn your lessons. You know, that the lesson might be
get a dog.
It might be
get a dog, everyone. Get a dog. Don't get a cat. It annoys me when people. I'm depressed. I'm going to get a cat. No, worst thing you can do. Get a dog.
I think Freud would
a big
disagree
dog.
with you on that. He said time with cats is always time.
But I disagree with a lot of things that Freud said. Anyway, there you go. Anyway, Minnie, thank you so much for doing this. Anything else you want to mention before we go? Because you look like you got something on.
Well, my advice is always process the pain. Don't numb or avoid it. You know, pain is actually your friend. You just got to learn to work with it. It's trying to help you. I believe in all the methods that involve turning towards your pain and processing it rather than trying to avoid it, distract yourself, run away from it, all of those things. I know you disagree.
No, I don't. No, I don't disagree. I agree with that. That can help certain types of depression. Let's just simplify it. Types of depression, or people that have repressed, not suppressed. I think it helps massively what you're preaching. Actually, yeah. I'm just saying that I found that my method has worked very well. I've helped a lot of people with my method, but like I said, on the 7-day mastery program, I have called you up and said, this person, my method is not going to help him in this certain area. Pick up, game, attraction, dating, yes, fine, but he's got some real deep issues here that he needs to bring up, and that's when I send you in. So it's, I would not invite you to work with my 7-day students if I felt that you were going to do something which, wasn't helpful. You've been a huge help, and that's why they've, we just had nothing but good, positive feedback.
Oh, thanks very much.
No, I'm being serious. I cherish everyone that comes and helps my 7-day mastery students. It's just, there's two different ways of looking at it. I think, people can listen to this and they can decide, but whatever happens, if you want to come to the 7-day mastery program, you can, we can call in Minnie to help you if that's what you want. So there you go.
Yes, but on that note, I do have to recognise that when it's a case of somebody needing to go to see a therapist or get medical advice, I'm not... We're
not medically trained. I'm not a psychologist.
I think a degree isn't really a qualification that can help with everything. Mm-hmm. Really, it's using my own experiences to help people to process stuff in the ways that have worked for me, which has been a combination of lots of different things that I've sort of pulled together.
The Minnie method.
But yeah, if you're really, really, really struggling, call Samaritans, and yeah, let's wrap it up on that.
Okay, then.
Happy note.
Thank you for watching, guys. Check out the website kezia-noble.com. Bye-bye.
Bye.